Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here. Time for another Patreon-sponsored blind reaction. And this one comes to you courtesy of the Doctor, who has requested that I react to Game Theory, the Five Nights at Freddy's 7 Oopsie, Scott's Problem with Fanart. Now, I have very little idea of what this is about. I know not a whole lot about Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, I'm very much aware of it, but I didn't know Scott had a problem with fan art. I mean, there's a lot of it out there. Five Nights at Freddy's is heavily, I mean, it's got a huge fan community who just constantly crank out fan art and fan just everything. Fan games, fan, just all kinds of fan content. And yeah, it kind of surprises me to hear that maybe there was a problem with that had by the creator. I'm interested to hear what this is about. And I mean, game theory and film theory, and just this guy in general, Matt Pat, he always makes things interesting. So I'm curious just to be informed on this topic that I'm at the moment completely unaware of. So let's just go ahead and get this started. And here we go. All right. What do we got?
We cover a lot of scary stuff.
Okay.
Today is no clickbait.
Is that an attempt at a jump scare?
Topic of all. Copyright.
Yes,
With
yes.
Of FNAF,
I agree.
All my favorite topics in one episode. I love 2019.
And it's recent. 2019 from this year. This must have happened not that long ago. Whatever the story is. And it is.
Hello, Internet.
Pat News. I didn't know he did news.
Today, call me Gloria Bolgia because our top story is an oopsie. One big oopsie made by one big man.
It's kind of weird seeing him on camera so much. I guess that's something he just does for the new show.
Space. That man's name is
Scott Coffin. I don't know. I don't know what he even looks like.
Catch you up. Last episode, we analyzed a teaser image for Scott's new VR game, FNAF Help Wanted. What I didn't mention in that video, though, was that it was only online for just a couple of hours. In fact, by the time I had gotten to check out this thing, it had been wiped clean from the internet. Only preserved thanks to some dedicated Redditors, specifically GB Aura Recharged. Now, Scott is no stranger to posting things only to rip them off the internet later. He's done it with comments on my videos, he did it with version 1 of FNAF World, his contents of the infamous FNAF 4 box, yep, those got changed. Heck, even the script for his new movie was written, approved, and ready to shoot, and then he just threw it out. It's like, this is
okay, well, he seems like an interesting guy.
It was different. This time, it was because the team working on the VR game, Steel Wool, had unintentionally used fan art. As he said on Reddit, quote, "My first teaser in more than half a year was made using questionable choices and traced fan models."
So that's the that's the problem with fan art we have.
Quote again, as you all remember, the artwork that I teased for the game, which was actually a portion of the cover artwork, included characters that had used fan art and fan models as references. When I learned about that, I was obviously pretty upset and took down the teaser. The person working on the artwork used images that he thought were mine. If anything, everyone who had one of their models referenced should pat themselves on the back. Your models looked like they were canon. I think it's a testament to the fan community that the fan
it really is.
Looked identical, and some of them look better. So the TLDR of this whole thing is that he pulled down the teaser because it used recolored, reskinned models made by a fan of characters that Scott Coffin himself created that looked so close to the original creations that his own team couldn't tell him apart from the originals. And
that's crazy.
Sparked a really interesting question in my head. Did Scott legally have to do this? These are his characters.
I don't think he did.
So close
I think
that they probably wouldn't have been seen as any sort of transformative use. Now, obviously, he cares about this community a lot.
I'm not really sure. Copyright law is weird.
Absolutely the correct decision from a goodwill standpoint, but what would the law say about this? After doing the research, it's a lot more complicated.
It often is with the law.
Than you might think. To get there, we're going on a twisted copyright journey that'll show us why Naughty Dog lives up to its name, why your photographs of
Naughty Dog
are probably illegal, and why everyone's in an uproar about Rule 34. Oh boy, welcome online. Copyright law doesn't know what's hitting it. That's a terrible last line. Copyright law doesn't know what's hitting it. Copyright law don't have an indicator. Just gonna
just move on. Just move on.
Oh, and before we dive into this episode, you might have noticed that I actually released another video alongside this one today. In that upload, I specifically talk about this channel and a lot of our own personal issues that we've had with fan art in the past, as well as a way to protect yourself if you're a fan artist who's working online right now. It's actually a really important video for me, touching on a topic that I've stayed really quiet about for quite a long time. So before you go down into the comments and start laying into me for not being allowed to cover this issue because I supposedly stole fan art in the past, please go watch that video too. That's actually why it's a dual upload. I couldn't really decide which one made more sense to go first, because really the two complement each other. They comment off of each other. So just please watch both. It'll do me a favor. It'll save me a lot of grief when I read the comments in this. Save my self-esteem a lot of grief as well. The other disclaimer that I should mention at the beginning of this episode is that there's a lot of fan work out there that is transformative, that is not considered to be a copy of anyone else's work. This episode actually isn't about that. Today, we are purely focused on fan art that's intended to closely represent a character that already exists, and all the basic legal mumbo-jumbo that's around that. So, we all on the same page? We all good? Great! Let's get into it. Let's go do, we can do. Now, Scott is far from the only game maker that's had a copyright oopsie when it comes to teasing a new game. Case in point, the original version of the trailer for Uncharted 4: A Thief's End was released containing a painting that took images from Assassin's Creed Black Flag's concept art. The one with the pirate. I gotta give credit where credit's due here, guys. That is incredibly on brand. Stealing artwork to promote a game that has the word thief in the title. Very smart. Very meta.
I'm sure it was
Ubisoft wasn't appreciating that
intentional,
meta commentary though, and Sony was quick to pull the video and replace the asset. Oopsies like this also aren't just limited to marketing materials and teasers either. Back in 2013, a graphic designer named Cameron Booth made a post announcing that he was effing furious with the fact that the game The Last of Us featured a map that he had made of the Boston Metro. First off, I'd like to point out that The Last of Us, just like Uncharted, is a Naughty Dog game. I guess we know what the naughty is referring to in but after what I assume was a swift apology and a fairly decent payoff, Cameron quickly dialed back his language in a later public post saying, "It seems as if matters will be resolved to everyone's satisfaction shortly." Great, I'm so happy for you guys. Money truly heals.
There we go. That shows the power of money. Definitely.
Of the copyright world, because while the graphic designer who made the picture owns the copyright to his map and was absolutely in his right to complain about the improper usage, he actually doesn't have the copyright to the Boston Metro itself. Does that
That's true.
Dumb? You bet it does. In fact, it is so dumb that it can't be anything other than real. Real-world pieces of architecture are subject to their own copyright. Just like one musician can't copy the song of another musician, so too an architect can't copy the building design created by another architect. Things get even weirder though when you start thinking about what this means for pictures that people are taking in front of buildings. Those pictures technically are violating copyright, or at least they would be if it wasn't for this idea of freedom of panorama. You see, most countries have some law or general understanding in place that says you won't get sued if you decide to create an Instagram story showing yourself posing in front of some famous landmarks. Notice though that I said most countries. Most does not equal all. Case in point, France.
Okay.
France doesn't have freedom of panorama. As a result, technically speaking, you legally shouldn't be able to post photographs of the Eiffel Tower, but only the night photographs. You
Moon!
See, because the Eiffel Tower without lights was built in 1889, that one is old enough to have entered the public domain. But the lights that go on at night were installed in 1985, thereby making this an artistic work with live copyright, making posting photos of it illegal. That means that anything you find in a regular Google image search under Eiffel Tower at night was probably taken by fearless outlaws the law, throwing caution to the wind and posting their tourist photos of the Eiffel Tower in the evening. Probably a bunch of developers at Naughty Dog being like, whatever, we don't care. We steal artwork all the time. We're Naughty Dog. We're dogs who are naughty. So what does the Eiffel Tower have to do with FNAF fan art? Well, obviously, people are taking photos of the Eiffel Tower and art getting thrown in le prison. I actually didn't learn the word for prison when I took French. And that's because these crazy laws don't matter for people who are only using the image for personal consumption. You put an image on your fridge or you slap it on the desk at your office, you're fine. But the second you publish that image, it becomes a different story. Just take a look at any stock image website like Getty Images, which is a business built on legally owning the rights to every image in their archive, and you'll notice that most of the images of the Eiffel Tower, even the ones with low light, don't feature the lights on the building turned on. And this is where things get tricky. As if they weren't overly complicated enough. You see, if you publish a piece of artwork that features a character like Mangle or Mario or Mewtwo or heck Elsa, and you don't own the copyright to that character, then publishing that fan work is technically a copyright violation, which merits a huge question: what counts as publishing? Now, obviously, publishing includes things like putting it in a book that ends up in Barnes & Noble, but publishing actually has a much broader definition in the legal sense. Publishing, in the broadest sense of the word, just means causing something to become public or making it publicly known. That means that everything from printing up and handing out a bunch of flyers on the street to, you guessed it, posting it online is covered. It doesn't even matter if it's a non-commercial type of posting. Posting fan art non-commercially on your blog or a site like Tumblr or Instagram or Twitter all count as publishing that image. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, that affects a lot of people, yeah, it does. You're absolutely right. Technically speaking, every fan artist on Tumblr and DeviantArt and Pinterest and Pixiv and their own independent blog, they are technically violating copyright every time they post a new sketch of an existing character that's not transformative enough to be considered fair use. I know that sounds unbelievable, and that every fan artist out there is lighting their torch and rummaging for their proverbial pitchfork to come after me right now. But first off, don't kill the messenger here, guys. Legally, this is the truth based on the lawyers that I've spoken with and the legal papers that we've read. That is the letter of the law. But the letter is obviously only half the story, considering, of course, that the prisons across the country aren't filled with Rainbow Dash fan art toddlers. Though it'd be pretty funny if they were. What are you in for? Killed a guy. You? I drew a pink pony very accurately. In actual practice, the situation favors fan artists a lot more than you might first think.
Love that he's using MLP as an example.
On the internet, it's really rare for copyright holders to try and enforce their copyright. The only instances where you see this actually happen tend to be when a brand feels that the art that's being made really misrepresents their IP. One really convenient example of this in the gaming world is Blizzard, who issued DMCA takedowns across a bunch of different fan art in efforts to stop people from making how do I put this nicely? Renditions of Overwatch characters in compromising situations.
I see.
Loving each other just a bit too much for their liking. For those of you who have the foreign tongue, images of their characters in flagrante delicto, in the carnal embrace. Basically, Blizzard wanted people to skip from Rule 33 to Rule 35 of the Internet Handbook.
I don't think it's going to stop them.
And you can imagine just how effective Blizzard was at accomplishing that goal. Not that I would know personally, just doing research. For a friend. Anyway, according to the guidelines from Blizzard's policy on fan creations, they cracked down in order to maintain and protect the image of their games. They also said Blizzard requires that productions maintain the T rating that has been given to its products by the ESRB. And I get that, right? It makes sense. Well, it might have been kind of a futile effort to remove sexy time from the internet. Legally speaking, they're entirely within their legal right to protect their brand. But speaking of legal rights, it is a two-way street. Even though a company owns the rights to its characters, you, as the fan artist, own the right to your individual piece of fan art. So going all the way back to our example of FNAF fan art, which there's a lot out there, if you drew a picture of Freddy and the cupcake, what are the actual rights for that image? Well, Scott owns the copyright to the character, but you own the copyright to that specific image. So you can't publish it, you don't own the rights to the character, but Scott also can't publish that image because he doesn't have the rights to your artwork. You are
I guess that makes sense.
As it turns out, no one really has the rights to publish that image. Unless, of course, you both agree to it, but good luck there. Scott doesn't talk to anyone.
Oh.
Except for Dawko. Probably his secret son. I don't know. He talks to Dawko like all the time. Now, what would have happened if Scott hadn't owned up to his oopsie and this situation had actually escalated? What could the fan artist who created those character models have done to him? Turns out a very similar issue has come up and was settled in a fairly famous case with the iconic Obama Hope image from that election. The artist of the famous Obama image, Shepard Fairey, who is actually one of my favorite street artists, created the artwork, but he copied the image from a photograph of Obama that he, quote, found on the internet, but it was owned by an independent photographer from the Associated Press. In court, the ruling was that the Hope artwork infringed on the copyright of the original photograph. The original owner of the photograph now participates in all money that's earned by the rights to that image. This is also the one case where I'll actually mention fair use, because Shepard Fairey actually tried to make the argument that his work here was transformative, but the court didn't buy it.
Yeah.
In fact, he almost went to jail for it. The upshot of this whole thing is that, in theory, if a legal fight like this one would have happened in Scott's case, it could have very easily landed both parties in court, and it would have actually been pretty hard for Scott to win. Luckily, none of that happened. And I think a lot of that is because Scott holds himself to a higher standard and wouldn't have wanted to do a disservice to his fans. As he said in his apology, quote, "The only thing I care about is doing right by this community." Good on you, man. But there is another compelling reason for Scott to take that teaser down. Money. You see, the other big complicating factor in all of this isn't whether someone is really infringing on their copyright, but whether they're actually making money while doing the infringing. In the United States, criminal copyright laws prohibit you from actually using someone else's intellectual property for your own financial gain. This means that when you post your fan art online, you're not going to face any criminal liability. Fan artists, you are good to go. Sketchy nerd t-shirt companies that are selling unlicensed Nintendo merch, though, you might not be so safe.
Stop! You violated the law. Pay the court a fine or serve your sentence.
Likewise, if you're selling your own posters of your fan art images, well, that could land you in some legal hot water as well. And I know that this is the most sensitive subject around fan art because of all the commission that artists earn by doing fan art made to order for other members of their fan communities. I'm not condemning anyone. I'm not passing any sort of judgment on anyone else's online business. As someone who uses a lot of online images of other people's IP, I'm kind of digging my own grave here as well. This whole topic just makes me uncomfortable, especially since that's still not the end of this whole story. There's still only a select couple of ways that you could actually be sued, even if you did commercialize your fan art. The company would need to show in court that your art had damaged their company in some way. Using the Overwatch picture example again, if I can. If Blizzard took the fan artist's
that's a nice
court,
picture.
they would need to prove that somehow this adult-only content had damaged their brand in some way. In their case, Blizzard is trying to market their game Overwatch as a family-friendly experience for all players ages 13 and over. And so the brand may actually get hurt if the first thing that comes up when mom starts Googling Orisa is a bunch of this. Very family unfriendly.
Orisa?
Though, it's actually hard to tell. Well, it seems like they would actually have a good case.
Not sure why you would do that.
It's hard to quantify how much their brand would get hurt by stuff like this, which is blurry behind me. For your safety, I swear.
Your safety is my primary concern.
It's a pretty clear-cut case here. In most instances, fan art doesn't compete with the official images from the game. So what does all of this mean for you, the fan artist? Well, it means that you probably don't have to worry about getting sued. And even if you are getting close to getting sued, you're probably gonna know that you're doing something wrong long before anything happens. Like in 2015, the Pokemon Company went after a cafe that ran a Pokemon party unofficially at PAX that promoted itself using Pikachu posters and charged an entry fee. Or, in another case, a woman was threatened legal action from 20th Century Fox because she was selling a Firefly-themed hat on her Etsy store. So, long story short, just don't charge admission to your next Pokemon-themed birthday party and leave the Firefly apparel for Hot Topic. But to bring it all the way back around to FNAF one last time, while Scott doesn't stand to gain a whole lot by suing his fans over their creations, he does stand to lose a whole lot if he uses a fan-made model in the box art for a VR game that is for profit and could potentially make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
See, if he kept those fan models in his box art, it would, in theory, open him up to a much bigger legal problem where he might have to pay thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars in royalties simply for using those two pieces of artwork. So, Scott's decision to take down the teaser image was certainly the right thing to do from a moral perspective, but it's also the correct thing to do from a business perspective. I mean, don't get me wrong, Scott is all about giving back to the FNAF community, but maybe he's not interested in giving that much back. But hey, that's just a theory and certainly not legal advice. Consider this an official legal disclaimer that I am not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of lawyers for this episode, and if you get yourself into hot water for making or distributing fan art, you can use this video as an interesting talking piece with your legal counsel, but don't assume that I, Matt Pat, will be standing up for you in court as your legal defense. Here, watch this YouTube video about FNAF fan art. No, it's not really gonna work. Okay. Keep farting it up out there, guys. And remember, that is just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Well, there we go. That was pretty good. A very, very, very well produced video. Just he put a lot of. I mean, I doubt he's. I mean, maybe he's editing himself, but it's just very well edited and put together, and that helped to keep. Keep it pretty entertaining, even though it was about copyright law and just legal topics and all that stuff. Though, I mean, it's a topic that I personally find interesting already because, I mean, I'm involved in that sort of. Yeah, this was good, and it was a story I knew nothing about. I mean, I heard about the VR game for Five Nights at Freddy's, and honestly, that's if I were to play Five Nights at Freddy's, VR seems like the way to go. That kind of seems like it really suits the series and would make it that much more interesting and terrifying. That kind of scenario, if you're like just really, if there's no detachment from the environment, if you're actually just in it, then that I think would be perfect for what it's going for. But yeah, I was completely unaware of this legal issue and the takedown and everything. But it's interesting to hear. I think I did I did learn some stuff. I mean, I didn't know about the Eiffel Tower and the lights. I mean, honestly, I haven't really seen many pictures of it with the lights on, so maybe that's why I hadn't really thought about it. Yeah, Overwatch trying to stop the porn. Not gonna happen. Not with those characters. I mean, you're a lot of waifus there. I don't think. Yeah, it's not gonna happen at all. But good information, good stuff, good story, and as said, very well presented. And I kind of like seeing Matt, like, actually more of him in it. I mean, for his theory videos, it's mostly just his voice, but here we actually got to see him and see his delivery. And he's a pretty good animated guy, like just in the sense of being lively, not actually animated. But yeah, he has a good presence, and I think he actually does well before the camera. So it's kind of cool. Yeah, just good stuff. Anyway, hope you liked the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.